I'm a 31-year-old guy, and Lily, my wife, is 30. We live in Detroit, and until recently, I thought we had a pretty great marriage. Let me take you back a bit. About 11 years ago, I was visiting Lily at her parents' house, and her best friend, Rachel, decided to get in my face. She flat out asked me why I hadn't put a ring on Lily's finger yet. Rachel wasn't subtle at all, and what made it more awkward was that Lily just stood there and didn't stop her. It was pretty obvious what they wanted. Since I cared about Lily deeply, I took the hint and started planning to marry her. 2 years later, we tied the knot, and now we have 2 wonderful daughters. Getting married was one of the happiest moments of my life. I always wanted to be a good husband and father, and when Lily and I got hitched, I thought I was living the dream. She wanted a big wedding, and we made it happen. Tons of people came, including some of our relatives all the way from Puerto Rico. Even though we weren't rich, we've always been good providers, and our kids are happy and healthy. Lily's always been an incredible woman. She's smart, funny, and has a sense of humor you wouldn't expect from someone as beautiful as her. She's also an amazing mom. Our daughters, who are 7 and 4, adore and respect her. Our oldest even acts like a little version of her, which is something I've always told Lily and something she loves to hear. Honestly, I think she's stunning. Her smile, her brown eyes, and, well, her amazing figure. Lily's the kind of woman who struggles to squeeze into a pair of jeans. And whether she's wearing a classy dress or just leggings, her shape is impossible to ignore. She's always taken pride in her appearance, which sometimes made my mom think she was a little vain. Mom might have been right, but I never really cared. I work at a renovation facility, while Lily runs her own nail salon. This didn't surprise me. She's always had an eye for fashion and trends, even though she denied being a fashionista. Lily's the type who just has to have the latest thing, whether it's a new iPhone, designer heels, or name-brand outfits. It used to make me roll my eyes, but since it was her money, I didn't complain. That is, until we became parents. Having kids made her cut back on the glamour life, and now she focuses more on our daughters. These days, she's fine with the previous year's iPhone model, and instead of buying designer clothes, she gets Disney-themed outfits for the girls. The only time she pulls out her fancy clothes is for holidays or vacations. I've had to spend less too, but it doesn't bother me. Our kids come first, and my family is everything. Things seemed fine until recently, when we bumped into someone from Lily's past. Her old friend Carla's ex, Marcus. It happened at the grocery store. We were shopping as a family when our oldest reminded us about her favorite Pop-Tarts. Lily told me to go with her to pick out a box. After a long debate over a new flavor, we headed back to the aisle, only to find Lily laughing and chatting with some guy. My daughter interrupted their conversation, proudly showing off her Pop-Tarts, and that's when Lily introduced us. She explained that this was Marcus, who used to date her old friend Carla. At first, I couldn't even remember who Carla was, but then it hit me. Lily used to work with her at some old job before she started her nail salon. Marcus seemed friendly enough. He greeted us warmly and seemed genuinely happy to see us. I didn't think much of it at first, but as they kept talking, it got weird. Lily looked way too happy to see him, smiling, laughing, and hanging on his every word. I stood there awkwardly, waiting for the conversation to end, but it dragged on until I finally signaled that we needed to head home and cook dinner. Marcus laughed, said it was great to see us, and we went our separate ways. On the drive home, Lily couldn't stop talking about how surprised she was to see Marcus at the store. She said she had no idea he and Carla had broken up. I asked her how. I asked Lily how long it had been since she last spoke to Carla, and she casually mentioned it had been about 4 years. Hearing that, I figured they must have lost touch completely. At first, I thought this chance encounter with Marcus at the grocery store would be the last I'd hear of him. But as time went on, I noticed Marcus and Lily were keeping in touch. They began talking on the phone occasionally, and she even interacted with him on social media. Since she mentioned me in their conversations every now and then, I didn't think much of it. I felt included and didn't see it as a problem. However, their chats became more frequent, and the calls started lasting longer, even into late-night hours. I began to grow suspicious, especially after what happened on Super Bowl Sunday. That day, Lily was chatting with Marcus on the phone when I asked her a question. She answered me quickly, then a little while later handed me the phone, saying Marcus wanted to talk to me. I was caught off guard but took the phone. Marcus asked if I was planning to watch the Super Bowl, and I told him I was. When he asked who I was rooting for, I jokingly said the Lions. He laughed, said he was rooting for them too, and casually suggested we watch the game together. I told him it sounded fun, but we were hosting a group of kids at the house, and I doubted he'd want to deal with all the chaos. He laughed, agreed, and passed the phone back to Lily. I thought that would be the end of it, but a couple of hours later, Lily told me Marcus had called again and suggested I join him at a Super Bowl party his friend was hosting. Lily even offered to call her brother to pick up his kids earlier, so we could leave in time to go to the party. I decided to take her up on the offer, and after her brother came to get the kids, we got ready and arrived at the party just as the halftime show was starting. The party turned out to be hosted by someone who was a die-hard Cincinnati Bengals fan. The host spent most of the evening arguing about who would win, loudly hoping the Bengals would lose. When the Bengals did lose, we all had a good laugh at his expense and settled in to enjoy the rest of the evening. But as I observed Lily and Marcus, something didn't sit right with me. She was overly engaged with him, laughing, smiling, and standing far too close. I felt like I was being excluded from their conversations, though I told myself I might just not be socializing enough. At one point, I asked Marcus why he and Carla had broken up. He casually replied that he and Carla had been just casually dating back then, and it was never anything serious. Lily laughed and chimed in, saying she was surprised to hear that because Carla seemed to like him a lot. After a while, I excused myself to grab another drink from the cooler on the porch. I mingled with a few people outside, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. When I came back inside, I started looking for Lily and eventually spotted her and Marcus talking in a corner. Something about the way they were standing, how close he was, and the way he leaned in gave me a strange, uneasy vibe. I stayed out of sight for a moment to observe. Then I saw him hold Lily's hand, and she responded with a shy giggle. She soon walked off into the kitchen, and Marcus followed her, blatantly checking out her backside as she walked. All I could think was, what the hell is going on? I moved closer to the kitchen, trying to get a clearer look. Lily was standing by the sink, chatting with another woman, her back turned to Marcus. The other woman noticed Marcus staring at Lily's rear, and, from her expression, I think she told Lily about it. Lily glanced back over her shoulder, saw Marcus looking, and smiled at him before turning back to her conversation. It didn't stop there. Every so often, Lily would glance back at him, and he'd keep sneaking glances at her yoga pants. Normally, I loved the way Lily dressed, but now it was making me feel sick. It was obvious to anyone paying attention that they were exchanging subtle signals. Lily's expression seemed to say, I know you want me, and though they try to act casual, their behavior told a different story. All I could think as I watched this unfold was, I hope I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing. After the woman in the kitchen said something to Lily, she followed her back into the living room. That's when she spotted me. Lily walked up and asked what the guys on the porch had been talking about. I shrugged and told her it was nothing important and mentioned I was ready to head home. She said she wanted to stay longer, but I reminded her that her brother was still waiting with our kids and needed to leave once we got back. Reluctantly, she agreed. After saying goodbye to Marcus and everyone else, we drove home since we both had work the next day. On the drive, I couldn't keep quiet any longer. I had to bring up what I saw. I told Lily it looked like Marcus was hitting on her at the party. She acted like I was out of my mind. She laughed it off, saying I had misunderstood. I didn't want to push too hard, so I dropped it, but in my mind I knew I had to start paying closer attention. The way Marcus had been checking her out was undeniable, and I couldn't ignore it. The more I observed, the more suspicious Lily's behavior seemed. She was glued to her phone all the time, and Marcus's name started coming up more frequently. Not just with me, but in her conversations with Rachel too. Then she began being secretive, taking her phone with her everywhere, and staying up late at night talking on the phone. One night, I straight up asked her if she was still talking to Marcus. She shot me a sharp look and admitted she was, then hung up the phone about 5 minutes later. I eventually told her that it wasn't appropriate to talk to Marcus so late at night, and her excuse was that she used her daytime hours to talk to Rachel. When I pointed out how inappropriate her behavior was, she laughed and dismissed me, saying I was being paranoid. Anytime I tried to express my concerns, she'd brush me off, insisting there was nothing to worry about. My questions did have one effect, though. She stopped bringing up Marcus entirely, probably thinking that would make me less suspicious. It didn't. Then, 2 days ago, something happened that made me believe the worst. On Lily's day off, she mentioned earlier in the week that she'd be going to Rachel's house to do her mom's nails. Since I already knew about these plans, I wasn't particularly suspicious. But later that evening, my youngest daughter asked if we could have pizza for dinner. I told her mom was cooking, but she threw a tantrum. Honestly, I was in the mood for pizza too, so I decided to call Lily and tell her she didn't need to cook. When I called her, it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and the same thing happened. This struck me as strange, because Lily never had her phone off. I waited another half hour and called again, still voicemail. Frustrated, I decided to call Rachel to check if Lily was still at her house. Rachel answered right away, and when I asked if Lily was there, she told me she had already left. I was confused and asked if Lily had done her mom's nails. Rachel said Lily got a phone call in the middle of the visit and left abruptly, telling Rachel to let her mom know she could come by the nail salon tomorrow instead. This completely blindsided me. Rachel was practically like a sister to Lily, so for her to ditch her plans like that was out of character. After hanging up, I called around to see if anyone else had been in contact with Lily, but nobody had. To me, this left only one possibility: Marcus. Anger welled up inside me. I couldn't believe what was happening. I remembered that during the Super Bowl party, Marcus had mentioned which street he lived on, even though I didn't know the exact address. My gut told me Lily was there, and if she was, it wasn't for innocent reasons. Grabbing my keys, I was about to storm out of the house when I remembered my kids were still playing in their room. I quickly called my mom to see if she could babysit, but she didn't pick up. My best friend, let's call him Alex, was my last option. When Alex answered, I asked what he was up to. He mentioned his girlfriend was cooking dinner, so I hesitated before telling him what I needed. He asked again, so I finally admitted that I thought Lily might be cheating on me. There was silence on the line. It was the last thing Alex expected to hear. He asked if I was serious, so I told him everything. While sympathetic, Alex said he couldn't come to watch the kids, but offered to let me bring them over to his place instead. This frustrated me because Alex lived clear across town, but I had no other choice. I quickly got the kids ready, and it took about 30 minutes to get there. When I arrived at Alex's house, he asked if I knew where Marcus lived. I told him I didn't have the exact address, but knew the street. Alex looked at me like I had lost my mind. You're seriously going to drive up and down that entire street to find them? He asked. I nodded, my determination unwavering. Before I could leave, he stopped me and suggested I take his car instead of mine. If you're wrong, and they see your car, she's just going to call you the crazy husband. At least they won't recognize my car right away, he reasoned. Handing me his keys, Alex added, Don't do anything stupid with my car. Do you want me to come with you? I shook my head. No, it's already bad enough you're involved in this mess. Stay here with the kids. He reluctantly agreed, and I set off, hoping I was wrong, but preparing for the worst. The drive to Marcus's street felt agonizingly long, and my mind raced with every possible scenario. I couldn't shake the gut feeling that I'd catch Lily in the act. When I finally turned onto Marcus's street, I slowed down, scanning the area for Lily's silver Kia. The neighborhood was terrible, but at that moment I didn't care. All the suspicious behavior, the secrecy, the late-night calls, had brought me to this point. I was praying not to find her car. But I did. Not only did I spot her car parked outside Marcus's place, but I saw them too. Lily was wearing her pink sweatsuit, and Marcus was dressed in nothing but a white tank top, shorts, and flip-flops. She looked like she was getting ready to leave, but the way he stood close to her, practically hovering, made my blood boil. I couldn't believe it. Driving past, I erupted in anger inside Alex's car, yelling to myself, he screwed her. I know he did. There was no other explanation in my mind. And just like that, I bet her phone would miraculously start working again. I knew I had to beat her home. When I got back to the house, I was relieved to see I had managed to arrive before Lily. I quickly got the kids to bed and sat in the living room, waiting for her. About 40 minutes later, she finally walked in. Her expression was cold and distant, like she was annoyed to be home. Without a word, she brushed past me and headed straight to the bedroom. Her indifference infuriated me. I followed her into the room, and immediately confronted her. "Why was your phone turned off?" I demanded. She looked at me, unfazed, and replied, "It wasn't. My phone died, and I had to charge it." Her excuse was flimsy, but before I could call her out, I pressed on. "Where were you?" She sighed, irritated, and said, "I already told you. I was at Rachel's house." I shot back, "I talked to Rachel. She said you left early." Her face shifted for a moment, a brief hesitation before she brushed it off. "That doesn't mean I wasn't there," she said, her tone sharp and dismissive. I pushed further. "Did you leave Rachel's to see Marcus?" Her hesitation this time was longer, and it was all the confirmation I needed. Finally, she admitted, "Yeah, I did." "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking with frustration. She shrugged. "It doesn't matter," she replied, clearly wanting to end the conversation. "I'm tired of you making a big deal about Marcus. I just want to drop this. I'm tired." She changed the subject, asking, "Did the kids eat?" I told her we had pizza, and without another word, she left the bedroom and went to the living room. She turned on the TV and buried herself in her phone, acting as if nothing had happened. That night, something in our marriage broke. Lily hasn't been the same since. She barely speaks to me now, constantly texts on her phone, and spends most of her time in the dining room avoiding me. When she does look at me, it's with a mix of irritation and detachment, as though she's trapped and wants to escape. It's infuriating. She's acting like I'm the one who did something wrong, even though all I've ever done is love and provide for her. Her excuses don't add up. Whose phone dies in the middle of the day, especially someone who's always glued to it? My gut tells me she cheated, but I don't have solid proof, just a mountain of red flags. From Marcus ogling her at the Super Bowl party to her sneaking off to his house, it's all too much to ignore. I hope I'm overreacting, but deep down I know I'm not. I'll update once I have something concrete, but right now I feel lost. First, I want to thank everyone here for the support and the brutally honest advice. Your comments have been eye-opening and helped guide me through what has been one of the most challenging times in my life. I plan to post this update over the weekend, but so much has happened recently that I couldn't wait. To recap briefly, at the start of this year, my wife, Lily, bumped into her old friend Carla's ex-boyfriend, Marcus, at the supermarket. When she introduced me to him, I didn't think much of it at the time. She seemed overly happy to see him, but I chalked it up to reconnecting with an old friend. However, as time went on, things started to feel off. They stayed in touch, too much. They'd talk for hours on the phone, like each other's pictures on Facebook, and Marcus even started calling her late at night. When I expressed my concerns, Lily dismissed me, saying I was overreacting. She'd laugh, giggle, and even teach him Spanish words, which stung since we're Puerto Rican. Things came to a head at a Super Bowl party Marcus invited us to. There, I caught him openly ogling her backside, and she didn't seem to mind. She didn't even call him out, which made me feel disrespected. When I confronted her about it later, she brushed it off like it was nothing. Last week, things got even worse. Lily claimed she was going to Rachel's house to do her mom's nails, but when I called Rachel, she said Lily had left after getting a call. My gut told me she was with Marcus. With the help of my best friend Alex, I borrowed his car and drove to the street Marcus lives on. Sure enough, I found Lily's car outside his place and caught her with him. Marcus was practically half-dressed in a tank top and shorts, and Lily looked guilty as hell when she came home later that night. She tried to act like nothing was wrong, but her vague excuses and refusal to communicate only deepened my suspicions. Since then, she's been acting like I'm the problem, like I'm some kind of prison guard. She avoids me, barely interacts with the kids, and spends all her time texting in the dining room. The breakthrough. Taking advice from this community, I decided I needed concrete evidence. I bought a voice-activated recorder and tested it out by taking the kids to McDonald's. It worked perfectly, so I planted it in Lily's car. It felt insane to resort to this, but I had to know the truth. When I retrieved the recorder a few days later, what I heard crushed me. There were multiple conversations between her and Marcus. In one, he called her sexy, and she giggled like a schoolgirl. I couldn't make out everything, but at one point, Marcus mentioned coming over to her place, and Lily agreed, saying something about leaving early to make it happen. That confirmed everything. When I told Alex, he was shocked but supportive. He called Lily a high-priced hoe and hoped I'd catch her red-handed. I swapped cars with him again, determined to monitor her movements. Already, she was wise to my schedule, using my work hours and obligations to my mom to sneak around. This weekend, I cut my visit with my mom short, despite her protests, to see if I could catch Lily in the act. My mom wasn't happy about it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd find something incriminating. After arranging for my mom's next-door neighbor to help her, I left earlier than planned and drove to Lily's nail salon around closing time. Her salon is in a strip mall, so it was easy to blend in with the other parked cars, especially since I was in Alex's car. When I got there, I saw Marcus's car parked, confirming my suspicions. I sat there, my stomach in knots, watching the scene unfold through the glass windows. Everyone else had left except for Lily, Marcus, and one of her employees. Let's call her Sherry. What hit me first was how dressed up Lily was. Far more than what's typical for closing a shop. And Marcus? He was all over her. At one point, he stood behind her with his arms wrapped around her as they talked casually. After about 20 minutes, things escalated. Marcus started kissing Lily's neck and grabbing her backside, pinning her against the wall. Sherry just stood there, watching, as if this was normal. Eventually, Sherry said something, maybe about leaving, and both Lily and Marcus waved her off like it was nothing. Then, hand in hand, they disappeared toward the back of the salon. I knew exactly where they were headed, the basement. When Lily first started the salon, she'd shown me the basement area, which was mainly for storage. She had mentioned wanting a bigger location with a proper office someday, as this space wasn't up to her standards. But here she was, turning it into her personal getaway with Marcus. I was furious. My heart raced as I realized how deep this betrayal ran. After everything I'd done for Lily, for our family, this was how she repaid me? And Marcus? He was a snake from the start, and now I saw his true colors. Grabbing my voice-activated recorder, I made my way toward the salon. Sherry was just coming out with her things when I intercepted her. She froze like a deer in headlights when I called out to her. "Don't lock the doors," I said coldly. "I know everything." Sherry played dumb, claiming she didn't know what I was talking about. That set me off. I called her a lying witch, and we got into a heated argument. She tried to shift the blame entirely onto Lily, saying, "Don't blame me that your wife is screwing another man." I fired back, calling her messy and telling her to get out of my way. Sherry tried to tell me I wouldn't catch them in the act because the basement door was locked. That made me even angrier. Why would they lock the door if you already knew what they were doing? I demanded. "They don't want anyone walking in," she snapped. Ignoring her, I pushed past and banged on the basement door, yelling for Lily and Marcus to come up. The door was locked, and no one responded. After 3 loud bangs, I shouted, "If you don't come up now, we're done." Still, no one came up. I turned to Sherry, seething. "How long have you known about this?" I demanded. She admitted she'd known about Marcus for about a month, and that Lily had started cheating with him recently. She said Marcus would come in during Lily's breaks, and eventually, they'd disappear into the basement together. The next day, Lily would apparently talk about what had happened as if it was no big deal. "Did you know he's Carla's ex-boyfriend?" I asked. "Yeah, your wife told me," Sherry replied nonchalantly. "We have kids," I said, my voice breaking with frustration. Sherry shrugged. "That's not my problem." I snapped back. "It will be in court." Her face went pale as I pulled out the voice-activated recorder and said, "Everything you've said is being recorded." I told her she could go home now, and she quickly left. Getting back in the car, I drove to Alex's house, emotionally drained. Alex and his girlfriend were incredibly supportive, consoling me as I recounted everything I'd seen. It felt good to get it off my chest, but I was still reeling from the betrayal. While Alex and I talked, my phone rang. It was Rachel. This was the last thing I wanted to deal with, but I answered. Rachel immediately started with, "Lily told me everything." She said Lily wanted to talk to me tomorrow. Furious, I told her to put Lily on the phone now, but Rachel refused. "She won't talk to you now because she knows you'll blow up on her," Rachel said. "I want to talk to her," I demanded. "If you come over here, I'll call the police," Rachel threatened. "Just wait until tomorrow." Rachel said she'd make Lily call me tomorrow, insisting that both of them wanted me to calm down. I muttered a half-hearted, "Yeah, whatever, and hung up. Returning home with the kids, the weight of everything hit me hard. I felt a tidal wave of emotions, anger, sadness, disbelief, all swirling together with my anxiety. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that this was happening to me. I had done everything right for this woman, or at least I thought I had. Yet, somehow, it still wasn't enough. After all these years of marriage, I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. The betrayal wasn't just a one-time thing. It was ongoing, deliberate. Marcus wasn't just some fling. He was a consistent presence in her life, and it made my stomach churn. Now everything in my world was about to change, and I had no idea how to process it. I couldn't stop my mind from racing as I thought about what Lily might say tomorrow. Would she try to justify it? Or would she blame me? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. If I didn't like what I heard, I was done. Divorce was on the table, and it felt inevitable. I felt incredibly alone, wishing I had stayed at Alex's house for more support. Hello, everyone. I want to start by thanking this community for the overwhelming support over the past couple of weeks. Many of you were concerned about how I'd handle talking to Lily after catching her cheating, and I can't blame you for assuming I might let her manipulate me into reconciling. Truthfully, I was curious about what she could possibly say to justify her actions. I was in a bad state of mind, and honestly I still am. Ever since we ran into Marcus, her affair partner, at the grocery store, my life has been unraveling. What started as a seemingly innocent reconnection spiraled into this nightmare. It's almost impossible to forgive her, especially knowing how much effort I've put into chasing the truth. Thanks to the voice-activated recorder, I now have undeniable proof of what's been happening since the beginning of this year. After I saw Lily and Marcus kissing in her nail salon, I got that call from Rachel saying Lily wanted to explain herself the next day. I reluctantly agreed. But the next day came and went, and Lily never called. That was fine by me. I used the time to start calling people, letting them know about her infidelity. I also reached out to a lawyer who had been recommended to me online. We had a brief conversation before he left his office, but he said he'd follow up with questions later. I took the kids to my mom's house for the weekend after she insisted on taking them. While I was grateful for the break, my mom didn't hold back her anger. She blamed me for marrying Lily in the first place, saying she'd never trusted her. She even said she didn't trust me with the kids right now. My aunt, hearing the commotion, came in from the kitchen and looked shocked as my mom explained everything. She threw up her hands, sat on the couch, and unmuted the TV my mom had paused to scold me. Even though my mom came down on me hard, I was relieved she was taking the kids for the weekend. I needed time to clear my head and figure out my next steps. When I arrived back home, Alex called to check on me. "Have you talked to Lily yet?" he asked. I told him no, adding bitterly, "She's probably busy sucking some dick." My friend Alex had warned me she might not even call, and honestly, I was fine with that. I was already mentally preparing to move on. On Saturday, while trying to clean the house and keep my mind occupied, I suddenly heard keys jingling in the door. I must have been so lost in my thoughts that I didn't even hear her car pull up. Lily walked in with Rachel by her side, and I was caught completely off guard. She didn't look like her usual self. No makeup, her hair pulled back haphazardly with a rubber band, and wearing a gray Nike sweatsuit. The shame was written all over her face. She looked nothing like the breathtaking woman I had once loved. Maybe this disheveled version of her was reserved for me now, while the polished, glamorous version was for Marcus. As they stepped inside, Rachel quickly asked me to let Lily speak, and I agreed. Rachel whispered something to Lily before stepping out onto the porch. I turned to Lily and said, "I'm surprised you came back to talk to me at all." She lowered her eyes and admitted, "I felt like I had to after you saw me and Marcus at the salon." She said she had been scared to come home since then. She asked where the kids were, and I told her they were at my mom's house. She looked visibly upset by that answer, as if it wasn't what she wanted to hear. Lily then brought up Sherry, saying she was mad at me for getting her co-owner to rat her out about Marcus. I corrected her immediately, saying I didn't need to. Sherry spilled everything to save herself the moment she was caught. Lily sighed and admitted that she and Sherry had argued, and Sherry hadn't come back to work since. I told her bluntly, "You got caught cheating, and I don't care about Sherry having a big mouth." Throwing her hands up in frustration, Lily admitted, "You're right. I didn't want to fight. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't want you to find out this way." I scoffed. "Sorry doesn't cut it. You betrayed me. How could you parade Marcus around, pretending he was just a friend, while throwing our entire relationship in the trash?" She nodded and said softly, "I know. I let my fantasies about Marcus get out of hand." She explained that back when her friend Carla dated Marcus, Carla used to gush about him. How handsome he was, how great he was in bed, and even shared their sexting conversations while they were at work. Lily admitted she was drawn to him even then. "When he came to pick up Carla one day, I thought he was really handsome," she confessed. "I liked him even more after Carla would talk about him. He complimented me a few times, but nothing ever happened back then." I pressed her about the supermarket incident, saying, "I remember you giving him your number that day." She admitted he had asked for it, started texting her, and quickly began flirting. "Then it turned into sexting," she said quietly. "After that, we started hanging out, with his friends at first." I cut her off. "Was that the night you were supposed to be doing Rachel's mom's nails? Down at Marcus's house on street name?" I added, letting her know I had been there and seen her. Her eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "I went looking for you," I replied, "and saw you with him outside his house." "So, did you screw him?" She hesitated, then said, "Yes, I'm sorry." She explained that Marcus had called her, claiming everyone was hanging out and convincing her to ditch Rachel to join them. But when she got there, she realized it was just him. "I knew what he wanted," she admitted. "He got touchy, started kissing me, and I didn't stop it. Things got out of hand." I exploded. "You're a stupid, selfish witch. You ruined our marriage for this guy." "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I can't take it back." Her apology rang hollow when she admitted, "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I want to pursue a relationship with Marcus." "You still here? Incredulous. You're freaking insane. You're throwing your family away for him." "I've always fantasized about him," she said. "When we ran into him that day, it all came rushing back. When he told me he and Carla weren't serious, it made me happy. I secretly hoped something would happen, and it did." She confessed that she didn't even feel bad when it happened, and that their relationship went from spontaneous to planned. "I should have talked to you about my feelings," she said, "but I didn't. You didn't deserve this, and I'm sorry." I asked, "Do you really think Marcus will stick around? What about the kids?" Lily didn't seem to care. She said she didn't want to stay married to me while thinking about someone else. After more back and forth, Rachel poked her head in, and Lily left with her, driving off to God knows where. I was left sitting in our empty house, stewing in anger and humiliation. As much as I hated to admit it, Lily was right. I couldn't stay in this marriage knowing she wanted someone else. On Monday, I called off work, met with a lawyer, and filed for divorce. He mentioned that alimony from Lily's nail salon was a possibility and that I could gain custody of the kids if they wanted to stay with me. My mom, who had been helping with the kids, let them stay with her over the weekend. Unfortunately, she also told them their mom was leaving to live with someone else, which forced me to have a difficult conversation with them. Later, as we drove past Marcus's rundown house, I pointed it out to my kids. "That's where Mom wants to live," I said. They looked at the ramshackle house with men loitering on the porch and quickly said, "No way." My oldest added, "Not for $1,000,000. Today, during lunch, I called Lily to tell her I had filed for divorce. Her response was simple, "Okay." She asked if she could come by to talk to the kids, but I told her my mom was picking them up from school. I said she could come over after I got home, and I'd ask my mom to bring them back. Here's the rewritten conclusion, keeping the same tone and message while enhancing clarity and flow. When Lily called and asked if she could just pick up the kids, I told her, "If you want to see them so badly, go to my mom's house and pick them up." But honestly, that might not be the smartest thing you do. She got upset, accusing me of always hiding behind my mom. I calmly repeated, "If you're bold enough, go to my mom's house to see the kids." She let out a frustrated sigh, clearly aware of how petty and protective my mom could be, and hung up the phone. Since that call, I haven't heard from her. I sent her one last text, making my position clear. From now on, the only things we need to discuss are the divorce and matters regarding the kids. My focus is entirely on my daughters now. Just because their mother gave up on them doesn't mean they're alone. I know Marcus isn't the type to give up his player lifestyle, while Lily's busy chasing him, or worse, being another notch in his belt. I hope she realizes what she's truly lost. But that's not my problem anymore. Let her figure out the mess she's chosen. I want to sincerely thank everyone here for their support. I was terrified to go down this road, but the advice and encouragement I received gave me the strength to face it. Hearing others share their experiences, some catching their partners in lies, and others even catching them in the act, helped me realize I wasn't alone. While this has been one of the worst experiences of my life, I'm determined to come back stronger. Lily's actions revealed a selfishness that destroyed our marriage. How could she betray all the standards we built together while holding me to them? It's a question I've heard from a lot of good men recently, and it feels incredibly unfair. But I've accepted the reality. Some people are just for the streets. This will be my last update. I want to thank everyone here one more time for walking this journey with me.